Middag.
Hi, goedemiddag.
Hoe gaan dit?
Goed en met jou?
Dankie. My naam is Estel.
Hallo Estel.
Ek
Ek
gaan
het
jou
weer. Daar sê.
aankondig vir vandag se sessie. Ehm
Okay.
ek wil net gou-gou hierso kyk of ek dink jy behoort te kan jou skerm deel. As jy dalk net gou kyk of net seker maak dat hy werk.
Net gou een
Nou sê
oomblik.
hy.
Okay, send request. Okay, kom ons kyk. As ek dit doen, kan jy sien?
Dis hy ja.
Kom ek sit hom net op presentation mode. Is hy reg?
Dis hy ja.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. En hoe unshare ek nou my skerm? Nee, daar. Okay, daar sê.
Dis hy.
Okay. Nou sê, is dit koud daar in Potchefstroom?
Dit is eintlik nie so vreeslik koud nie, maar dit is onverwags koud. Dan voel dit mos 'n bietjie erger as wat dit regtig is.
Ja.
Is
Nee,
is jy
gister.
in Ekskuus?
Hmm. Wil jy vra of ek in Bloemfontein is?
Ja.
Ja, ja, ek's in Bloemfontein, by die
Okay.
universiteit hierso. En
Okay.
dit was wildkoud, soos Bloemfontein maar kan koud word. En so gister was snerpunt, maar vandag is nou beter, moet ek sê. Maar
Mm.
ek dink weer die winter is maar hier.
Ja, nee, beslis. Dis nou nie meer speel nie. Dis nou winter.
Ja,
Okay, ek gaan maar so 'n paar minute gee nog tot 1 uur.
ja,
Uh,
dis reg. Ek gaan net my kamera aan afsit totdat jy my voorstel, weet, en dan vat
Bitter.
ek van. So ek wil net seker maak ek het so 20 minute om aan te bied en dan
Ja,
weet maar vrae en antwoorde, né?
ja, dit is reg.
Goed.
Okay.
Okay, daar sê ek sien uit daarna.
Good afternoon. My name is Estelle, and welcome to this edition of our GenWell presentations. Today we have Dr. Wal from the University of the Free State, and he will be talking to us about cognitive skills and how that can enhance your well-being. So like always, we are recording this session and it will be available afterwards. We're going to listen to Dr. Wal's presentation, and at the end, he will also be available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Estelle. Thank you for the introduction. And so of course, we're going to talk today about cognitive skills. And I'm going to share my screen. Right. Is it visible on your side?
Yes, I think you should just, there you go. There, that's perfect.
All right. Okay. So I would like to start to say that a lot of you have probably heard about the term neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity simply means that the brain has got the ability to change. And with the right kind of learning experiences, with the right kind of stimulation, the brain has got the ability to change irrespective what the upbringing, background, genetic makeup of the individual is. With the right kind of stimulation, the brain can change. And I usually use the analogy of a javelin thrower to say that if we teach the right techniques to a javelin thrower, how to position the arm, how to position the body, the javelin thrower can, with the same body strength, throw the javelin much further than without the technique. Now, in the very same way, we can teach the brain thinking strategies and thinking skills. And that means that we can develop the brain to perform much better, to solve problems much quicker, more complex problems. And oftentimes people don't know that. People don't know that we can train the brain with the right kind of thinking strategies and thinking techniques. And this is what cognitive education is all about. And this is the field that, the academic field that I am working in. So I'm going to start with the exercise, just to give you an experience of how this could work and how it could enhance your cognitive potential. So I'm going to ask you if you would be willing just to take out a blank piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what we call a complex figure. And I'm going to give you some time just to look at the figure. Don't cheat. Don't write anything down. Just look at the figure. And from memory, I just want you to recall as many of the detail as possible. All right. Now, let me just say before the time, this is a complex figure. You will most probably not be able to remember all the details, but try to remember as many detail as possible. All right. So are you ready? Okay. Here we go. So I'll give you a minute or so just to study the complex figure. Don't write anything down. All right. So don't write anything down. Just study the complex figure. Okay. So I want to ask you now from memory, just to recall, just draw the complex figure in the best way possible, as many detail as what you can. Just draw it on the piece of paper from memory. I'm going to give you a minute or so to do that. And then after that, we're going to go into what we call a mediated learning experience. Okay, so it's a bit difficult to engage. Usually it's much easier when one has got a face-to-face interaction, but hopefully you managed to call from memory some of the detail of the complex figure. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you some strategies how to remember the complex figure. And my purpose in doing this is to give you an experience of what the power of mediation could be to remember much more detail and to capture much more detail from your brain, and even if it's complex. All right, so what I want you to do is, let me just ask you the question. Can you see my cursor when I move it over the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
We can.
Right, so I just want you to follow the cursor, and I want you to see that at the base of this complex figure, there is a big rectangle, right? And if we remember the big rectangle, we've got the basic figure already identified, right? Then I want you to see that we can divide the big rectangle with two diagonal lines, right? Two diagonal lines. And this is important because it will give us a midpoint, right? But the rectangle is not only divided by two diagonal lines, it's also divided by a horizontal line that stretches from the left of the rectangle to the right of the rectangle, and it extends a little bit more. All right, and then there's a vertical line that extends from the bottom through the midline, stretching upwards, and it extends a little bit on top of the complex figure. So now we've got a rectangle that are divided by two diagonal lines, a horizontal line that extends to the right, and a vertical line that starts from underneath the big rectangle, going through the midline and extending upwards. Right, so now let's look at other big geometrical figures before we fill the detail in. So you will see that on the outside of the rectangle, there are three geometrical figures. A triangle, one triangle on top of the rectangle, then a second triangle on the left-hand side of the left-hand side of the rectangle, and a small little square at the bottom of the rectangle. So if you've got that, you've got a big rectangle, just to repeat, two diagonal lines dividing the big rectangle, a horizontal line stretching to the right of the rectangle, and then a vertical line from underneath the rectangle through the midpoint going upwards. And then we've got three geometrical figures on the outside, one triangle on top, one triangle, big triangle to the right-hand side of the rectangle, big rectangle, and one square at the bottom. So now we start to fill in the detail. We've got now the big geometrical figures figured out, and now we can start with filling in the detail. So let's start with the inside of the rectangle, and we will start like clockwise, like a clock. We will start in the top left triangle inside, and we're going to fill in the detail. Because this is the first inside triangle, I just draw one vertical line, that's the detail. Moving to the next quadrant, I draw a circle with three dots in it. Then I move to the next section, and there are five small lines perpendicular to the diagonal line. Five small lines like the number of fingers on your hand, 5. You skip one quadrant, and then you draw a smaller rectangle spanning over the two quadrants. Can you see the small rectangle? All right, it touches diagonal line, the two diagonal lines, and it's connected to the left-hand side of the big rectangle. The smaller rectangle is also divided by two diagonal lines, like the big rectangle. And on top of it, to finish it off, there's one vertical line. And then moving on to the last quadrant, there are then four horizontal lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here you've got 5 small lines. Here you've got four horizontal lines. Okay, now we're done with the inside of the big rectangle. And now we move to the outside. So we know we've got the 3 geometrical figures. In the first geometrical figure, the triangle, there's nothing, no detail. In the second triangle, there's one vertical line that that crosses the horizontal line, and a small little diamond on the tip of the triangle. Moving to the last geometrical figure, there's one diagonal line connecting with a big diagonal line that forms a big L like this, one diagonal line. And to finish it off, you've got 2 crosses to draw. One cross is lying on its side with one horizontal line, cross like this. And lastly, a vertical cross connected to the big rectangle. All right, so just to repeat, first we draw the big geometrical figure, the big rectangle. We divide the big rectangle with 2 diagonal lines to get the midpoint. We draw a horizontal line going through the midpoint, extending to the right-hand side. And we draw a vertical line from underneath the big rectangle through the midpoint, extending to the top. Now we draw 3 big geometrical figures on the outside of the rectangle, a triangle on top, a big triangle to the right, and a small square at the bottom. Now we fill in the details. We move clockwise. We start from the top. We draw one vertical line because it's the first quadrant. Then we move on. We draw a circle with 3 dots in. Then we've got 5 smaller diagonal lines perpendicular to the big diagonal line, 5 like the number of fingers on your hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You skip one triangle and then you draw a smaller rectangle touching the sides of the big diagonal lines with 2 smaller diagonal lines crossing. You finish it off with one horizontal line, and then lastly you draw 4 horizontal lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we move to the outside with the detail. In the first triangle, there's no detail. Second triangle, there's one vertical line that you draw. And at the tip of the triangle, you've got a diamond. In the square, you just got one diagonal line that connects with a bigger diagonal line to form a sort of a L. And lastly, you have to draw 2 crosses, one lying on its side connecting to the square and the big vertical line, and the last cross standing upright connected to the big triangle. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you now an opportunity. This shouldn't take too long to draw the complex figure by yourself. All right. So you may start. And usually this takes about a minute or so. So I'm just going to give you 30 more seconds and then we'll move on. Okay, so I'm not going to take much longer, but can I just maybe get an indication? Estelle, did you do much better with this one?
Yes,
Lorica?
much, much better.
Okay.
But even the second time, I must say, it's not easy.
Yeah. All right. Andries, I know that you're in a car, but could you sort of follow the steps in your mind?
Yes, I could.
Okay. Lorica?
Yes, it was also easier for me. Thank you, Wiepie. I could
Okay.
follow the steps. Thank you.
All right. So when we talk about cognitive education, and this is more what we call computational thinking, all right, we really look at three levels. On input level, we look at how is information gathered, data gathering. Is it systematic? Is it precise? Is it accurate? We look at to what extent can people place themselves in time and space, and do they have the verbal capacity to take in information accurately and appropriately? So that's the first level that we look at when we start to develop cognition. Then the second dimension is the elaboration level, and that's the processing of information. So can a person identify a problem? Can they identify cues that they can help them? Is there spontaneous comparative behavior? Consideration of evidence? Can they hypothesize and make inferences? Is there logical thinking? Can they summarize the gist? And is there good retention? And then we also look at output level. Is the output appropriate and accurate and mature and precise? So cognitive, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but when we start to develop cognitive functions, we look at these three dimensions, and with each one of these dimensions, we can sort of, with small little knobs, adjust the thinking of an individual or a group to enhance the thinking processes. And simply what I did with this exercise is, I focused on all three of these levels, without you knowing it. And I gave you some thinking strategies that could help you enhance and remember better the complex figure. So this strategy is called what we call a mediated learning. And mediated learning is simply, the S stands for a stimulus, or the information that comes in. The O stands for the organism, or that is the human being, the brain of the human being. And the R stands for the response. And what we do, we place a human mediator between taking in information and processing information and the response on the other side. So the green arrows indicate a direct exposure to learning or to an environment. That's the first complex figure that I showed you, where you had to remember it yourself. And a mediated learning process is, I placed myself as a human mediator in between you and the stimuli that came from the complex figure. I helped you to take in the information more accurately and appropriately. I helped you to process the information more systematically, and I helped you with the response. So you'll see that the H stands for the human mediator, and that is what we use to enhance cognition. Now, I want to leave you with some immediate 3 tips or a thinking routine that you can immediately apply with yourself and with your children, that should already enhance your cognitive engagement with certain situations, whether it's a learning experience or just trying to solve problems in the office, or with your children or grandchildren at home. And so I'm going to share with you a very basic thinking routine. And I'm applying this in my own life. I've applied this very successfully with my children. And this simply is constituted by 3 focus areas. It doesn't have to be in any sequence, as long as all three movements are involved in a self-conversation or a conversation with somebody else. And when you do that, the level of engagement just simply moves to a different cognitive level. So the first movement, I'm simply going to mention it and then explain a little bit more. The first one is to focus and connect. All right. The second one is to bridge. And the third one is to unlock. And I've tried to identify certain keywords that you can just remember: focus and connect, 1, bridge 2, unlock 3. And if you involve all 3 movements in a self-conversation or a conversation with your child, it will definitely enhance cognition. Right. So so the first movement is what we call focus and connect. And the picture that you need to remember there is, you know, where am I putting the magnifying glass? It's a fallacy. We can't multitask. The brain does not have the ability to multitask. You simply switch attention very quickly from one focus area to another focus area. And so in our conversations, it's important, or in our self-conversation, to ask the question, you know, what is it that I want to bring in focus, you know? And you need to do that with the intention that there's always a connection with your child. So a good example, mothers do this very naturally. A mother is walking in the garden. She sees a beautiful flower. She wants a child to experience the beauty of the flower, and she wants to teach her something. And she bends over and she looks at the flower and she says, she smells the flower and she says, "Oh, wow, this is amazing." And what does the child do? The child immediately focuses on that one specific foci stimulus in the environment. That brings a focus, and he or she metaphorically takes the mother's hand in the learning process, and the little child also bends over and she looks at the flower and she smells the flower. That is what needs to happen in each and every learning experience or informal engagement with your child. Ask yourself, what do I want the child, or what do I want myself to see or experience or hear or smell right now? And put a metaphorically magnifying glass there to focus the attention on that specific stimuli in the environment. And you can do that in various ways. I can, for example, say, you know, I want you to focus more attention to what I'm saying, and therefore I'm speaking more softly and in a staccato way. So just by changing the tone of my voice, I focus your attention on what I'm saying. And I'm doing this until I know the other person is connecting with me, the other person is taking my hand in the learning process. So there has to be a reciprocity, a response, an indication that this person is engaging in the conversation. This child is getting involved in the conversation. So that's the first movement, right? And there's you know, some words that you can use. You can you know, take what you want them to see or hear or taste or smell, and you can say, I want you to see this, I want you to hear this, I want you to taste this, smell this, or experience this. Therefore, I'm saying it out loud, or therefore I'm bending forward and I'm smelling it, or therefore I'm taking you on this trip. Simply keeping quiet about your intention, what you want them to learn or focus on, is not going to help the process. You have to make the implicit intention explicit, but through your body posture, your voice, your tone, and what you say. All right. So that's the first tip. The second tip is then to bridge the experience. All right. And what we do here is, you know, we have to build a bridge, a metaphorical bridge from the here and the now learning experience. And we have to bridge it to in time and space to something else. And this is so important for your own thinking and for your child's thinking, because it helps you understand that the world is interconnected with one another, and there are certain principles that govern the world and natural laws. All right, so you have to take the immediate experience and bridge it to in time and space. And how we do that, we first of all ask the question, how can we formulate a rule or a concept or a principle from this experience? All right, and then we ask the second question, where else in life have you seen this or observed this or experienced this? So let me give you an example. The one time I was walking with my daughter when she was much smaller, and she said to me, well, Daddy, do you know that goldfish, if they are in a small bowl, don't grow as big, you know, than when they are in a pond? And I said, well, that's very interesting. And immediately I wanted to extend this conversation to enhance cognition. So I asked her the question, so if we have to formulate a rule here, what do you think that rule would be? So of course it's a conversation to and fro, but we come up with a rule that, you know, the environment, the small bowl of water limits growth. And the moment you enlarge the environment, you know, the potential for growth is there, growth and development. So I ask her, well, where do you think this also applies in life? So the conversation carries on, and we do together discover, well, it works like this in the business world. If you've got a small shop in a small town, right, the potential for growth of that business is very small. It's limited by the environment. But if you've got a business in a larger city, you know, or a big country like the United States, the potential for growth is much more because the growth is influenced by the environment. So that's a very simple example of you know, what you can do in very casual conversations. And I do this with self-talk with myself as well, to ask, well, you know, what is the core concept or the core principle or the core rule that I can identify from this experience? And where else in life have I seen this rule or concept also operate? And that helps me in my own thinking patterns, but also in my conversations with my children and other people. Then the last movement is you have to ask the question, you have to unlock the deeper meaning and significance of this learning experience. All right. And you do this simply by asking the question, why is this important and significant? And this is so important because, coming back to my conversation with my daughter, you know, I then asked the question, but why is it important that we understand that growth is limited by the environment? It can either be inhibited or it can stimulate growth. Why is it important? And, you know, we could come up with any answer to say, well, you know, maybe one day I want to start a business, and it's important that I don't limit my business by limiting the environment around my business. But this is also the part where you bring in values, worldviews. A big part of my studies was in Christian education, and so this is the place where you bring in, you know, a certain perspective, you know, about biblical values or morals, you know, why this principle or rule is important. All right, and this also links your child and the experience to the value system and to the worldviews that you want to instill in your child. All right, so 3 movements. The first movement is you have to focus, you have to bring the focus, and you have to connect. In a sense, you take the implicit, what you want the child to see, hear, or experience, and you make it explicit by bringing a sharp focus until the child takes your hand. Then you have to bridge it, identify a core rule or a core principle, formulate it, and then bridge it in time and space to other examples. And lastly, unlock the importance and the significance of this. And by applying these 3 simple steps, you would be able to enhance your own cognition and that of your children or grandchildren significantly. Now, I just want to use some examples where we have applied this, various contexts, just to give you sort of a sense of how this can help. You know, this is a young man that I've helped for one weekend. He was writing his Cambridge AS, that's grade 12 examination levels, and his marks increased from under 40%. He had to rewrite the subject from under 40% to 62%. And he was very just receptive about taking these strategies. We also apply these in larger contexts. So we've assisted the University of Cape Town, you know, where we apply these principles not to individuals, but to groups and unlock group thinking. So in that regard, we've unlocked, you know, just amazing strategic thinking. And we're busy with a collaborative problem-solving project with some staff members, lower paying staff members, but they are designing and just amazing things because we take them through a proper process of collaborative thinking. And this is just one of the results where we've identified, you know, this is the result of the strategic thinking with 3 key strategic areas, you know, proper vision and so on. All right, and then lastly, this is a project that we are doing with a primary school. We'll be taking them through design thinking process, and this is a process where they can actually put stickers there. We're taking them through the movements of connect with one another, explore the problem, design the solution, and implement the solution. And with each one of those, we've got 3 steps. Collaborative thinking processes that we unlock, and they've got badges that they can put on there as we move through the processes. All right, so Estelle, before I hand over back to you, just maybe some potential opportunities for support. If you've got a need for support, I can support you with what we call individual cognitive coaching, and that is, to lift your own thinking to a higher level of functioning in order to make better decision making. Or what we also do, we take groups and we unlock thinking processes to make better decisions in the work environment through strategic thinking or problem solving or systems thinking. And there are my contact details. Okay. Sorry, I went a bit over time, but over to you, Estelle.
Thanks so much. That was really interesting. And it reminds me of, I used to be a teacher, and it took me a few years to really understand this, and that is that teaching and learning are both relational activities. And I think the very positive thing that it makes me think of now is the fact that we are also scared that robots are going to take over and we won't have jobs anymore. But I think this is a very, very good explanation of why a robot will never be able to do this. Because children, but not just children, everybody learns better when they have interaction with another person.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, at the university where I'm working, we've got many conversations about artificial intelligence and how to position artificial intelligence in the learning and teaching space. And there are very, very strong views on both sides. I do think artificial intelligence can enhance thinking if you use it in the right way. But if you use it in the wrong way, I think the big danger is that you split consciousness from intelligence, right?
Yes.
And that's extremely dangerous, for the cognitive development of the human race. So I think we have to think seriously as educators and cognitive scientists about the use of AI, that it does not diminish the cognitive functions of future generations.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if anybody else has any questions.
Perhaps just a comment, not a question. Thank you, Estelle and Wiepie, for the insightful presentation. I was very eager to join this session because when I did my master's and PhD, it was on the well-being of staff, and really, all the different ways in which well-being applies, and how it should actually be an integrated exercise, and to really get to that place of flourishing. And now that you presented, Wiepie, I was just reminded about the importance of our thinking in this whole process of being well. And I have a daughter at University of the Free State this year, first year, and I've also seen that she struggles sometimes with just really concentrating or to really focus on what is important. So I think this is really a valuable exercise, and that individual cognitive thinking to really stimulate that this is really helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lurika. If I may, just a quick comment. So, I'm of this thinking school that cognition is not separated from the other parts of our existence, right? And so there's a lot of literature, big body of literature that now indicates the connection between the mind and the body, right? And so I think, if you change cognition, it has got an effect on the emotional side. In actual fact, Reuven Feuerstein says that cognition and emotion are two sides of one translucent coin, and they influence one another continuously, and that's what I believe. But now the body also comes in. So I think, cognition and emotion and the body, continuously influence one another in ways that we do not even understand yet from the science. And so, so speaking about well-being, I do think if one changes cognition, it will have an effect, on the other aspects of the human as well. Yeah.
It's very
Absolutely.
exciting. Sorry, Lorica. It's very exciting for me to think about this and about how much is there still to be discovered about this topic. If you think about the advances that's been made in the past few decades in neuroscience, and yeah, what you just said, it reminds me of the question that was asked, can the mind change the brain? And it seems like it can. And I think there's still a lot of really exciting things to be discovered in that environment. And that will also be very useful for us in our pursuit of well-being.
Yeah. So, just a quick comment. That's a fundamental question. Can the mind change the brain? I'm coming from the school of Reuven Feuerstein, the educational psychologist, and the mediated learning stems from his theory, and he started or formulated the theory around structural cognitive modifiability, which is just the other term for neuroplasticity. But what did he assisted Jewish children that came from the Holocaust after the from the Second World War, and assisted those children that were 3 to 5 years behind academically and developmentally behind the other children in Europe. And he developed this whole system of mediated learning and structural cognitive modifiability with applied systems to enhance the cognition of those children. But his words were, we started it as a belief system, right? We believed that the human brain can change with the right kind of exposure and the right kind of learning experiences. And that was the starting point. And structural cognitive modifiability means that the structure of the brain, meaning the brain itself, can rewire itself with the right kind of learning experiences. And so what you say touches specifically on his theory on structural cognitive modifiability, that the brain can change, rewire itself with the right kind of learning experiences, consciousness, and so on. And I think the new neurosciences start to prove that.
Yes, yes. And how powerful is it to know that that is possible? And it's good to be reminded of that, because you carry on with life every day. We're all on autopilot, and it's good to every now and again just to be reminded of the power that you really have in your own life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I want to ask you if you can please show us that complex structure again, because I need to know what I forgot. Because I know I forgot some details.
All right. Okay, there you go.
Oh, I actually did quite well the second time around. Okay.
And so by the way, this is one of the tests that we use in what we call the learning propensity assessment device. So this is an alternative to IQ tests. We measure learning potential, and so there are various tests, but this is one of the tests that we use to just to identify where are the potential for growth and to help even normal functioning individuals to go to a next level of cognition. So yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for your presentation and sharing your insights with us. I think everybody enjoyed it a lot, and it gave us something to think about.
Thank you so much. Keep well and be blessed. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
everyone.
Vipia. Thank you. Bye-bye.